All right, that takes us to this idea that you presented, that you gave me, Disney, and you are bullish on the stock. And it's interesting because I don't know exactly how the revenues break down, but this is a company that does a lot of the theme parks and
Hmm.
movies and entertainment, especially in cinema movies. These are things that have been beaten up with COVID, and along with theme parks. And one would think that this is kind of a weird thing to be bullish about, which is why I think it's such a great idea. Um, I mean, not as investment advice, but just as an idea. So yeah, talk to me about that. Why are you bullish on Disney?
So I guess there's a couple different angles to think about this from. Maybe let's start with the parks and the theaters, as you just discussed. Disney's parks business has been very, very successful over the past, call it 20 plus years. And Iger and Eisner both talked about this idea of the parks and the role they play and the pricing power. I think it's all well understood. And I think those assets are just so unique that it's very, very difficult to replicate what they've built. They continue to invest very aggressively to expand the parks to make it a better experience. I just think that those assets are so well run that it's inevitable that when we get to something closer to normalcy, and they've had a fairly significant recovery, obviously from the heart of the pandemic. I just think those assets will continue to perform very well. Theaters is interesting because we're really seeing a bifurcation in terms of the demographics of people who are coming back to the theaters. Your older guests are not returning in the way that younger guests are. Luckily for Disney, that their key IP is focused on those younger demos. So on a relative basis versus their peers, they'll probably shake out better in that regard. But I do think the general trend of the theaters having problems is something that probably will not go away. And Iger even talked about this recently, which I thought was an interesting point for him to bring up, because it's not something people discuss very often. But he talked about affordability and the idea of, hey, paying $11 a ticket or whatever it may be, and take 3 or 4 people, it's $40+ versus subscribing to Netflix or to Disney Plus and paying 10, $15, depending on what plan you're on, and having a lot more than just one night's worth of movie watching as a result. So I think the ability or the attractiveness of the alternatives has improved so much with streaming that I think that probably continues to put pressure on theaters as well. Disney has to navigate. I think you have to start from the view, this is where I'm at least, that they have the best IP in the world, and it's evident in the numbers. You can look at the astounding success that Disney Plus had right out of the gates, blew every estimate away by a mile, even if you adjust for Hotstar, which is their asset in India. I think you have to think through, can they intelligently figure out how to distribute this IP, basically? And it's a challenging problem. I think one thing that really helps is that Disney's exposure to the bundle is mostly a sports related issue. It's not really entertainment programming. I mean, The Mandalorian, Boba Fett, any of these shows, they're all going direct to Disney Plus. So it's not an issue of them figuring out how to distribute their entertainment programming. It's figuring out how to navigate mostly a sports distribution issue. So I think they can figure that out over time. But as we look at the entertainment side of it all, they're on this path to hundreds of millions of subscribers. I think over time you'll see them figure out how to press the ARPU lever. And I think when you look at the numbers and really think out over 5 or 10 years, I think what you'll find is that the D2C entertainment assets that they have are going to be vastly larger than what they had in the linear pay TV, basically US business that they had previously. So that's kind of the framework that I start from. Execution's a massive part of this bet, I think, and I do believe there are reasons to have some concerns on that front.